Where did you go? Out. What did you do? Nothing. By Robert Paul Smith, 1957. On my block when I was a kid, there was a lot of loose talk being carried on above our heads about how a father was supposed to be a pal to his boy. This was just another of those stupid things the grown-ups said. It was our theory that the grown-ups was a natural enemy of the child, and if any father had come around being a pal to us, we'd have figured he was either a little dotty or a spy. What we learned from another kid. I don't remember being taught how to play mumbly peg. I know. In the books they write it mumble tea peg. But we said, and it was, mumbly peg. When you were a little kid, you stood around with a covey of ancients of 9 or 10, played mumbly peg, shifting from foot to foot and wiping your nose on your sleeve and hitching up your knickerbockers, saying, "Let me do it. Oh, come on, let me have a turn." Until one of them struck you in a soft spot, and you went home to sit under the porch by yourself, or found a smaller kid to torture, or loused up your sister's rope skipping, or made a collection of small round stones. The small round stones were not for anything, it was just to have a collection of small round stones. One day you said, "Let me have a turn, let me have a turn," and some soft-hearted older brother, never your own, said, "Go on, let the kid have a turn," and there, by all that was holy, you were playing mumbly peg. Well, now I taught those kids to play mumbly peg, and for all I know, if I hadn't happened to be around that day, in another 15 years they would have to start protecting mumbly peg players like Rosie Spoonbills or the passenger pigeon. But why don't the kids teach the other kids to play mumbly peg? What do these kids do with themselves all the time? As far as I can find out, they don't play immies anymore. I see the newsreels every once in a while that they're holding the National Marble Championships. What kind of insanity is this? In the first place, any kid on my block who called an immy a marble would have been barred from civilized intercourse for life. In the second place, who cares who's marble champion of the world? The problem is, who's the best immy shooter on the block? In the third place, they play some idiotic kind of marbles with a ring drawn in paint, and I'll bet a hat the rules are written down in a book. On my block, the rules were written down in kids. The rules were that as soon as the ground got over being frozen, any right-minded kid on the way home from school or in recess planted his left heel on the ground at an angle of 45 degrees and walked around it with his right foot until there was a hole in the center size. You couldn't measure this hole. We all knew what size the hole was supposed to be. I could go outside right now and make a hole the right size. I did. It's still the same size, the size of an immy hole. And while I was outside, I drew a line with the toe of my foot the proper distance from the hole. It's still the same distance. It isn't something you measure in feet. It's the distance from the immy hole that the line is supposed to be. Then you stood on the line and to start threw Immy's underhand at the hole. There was a kid who moved from another town who said this was lagging, but we didn't pay much attention to him. There's a lot more to Immys. There's fins or fens and knucks down, and whether it was fair to wiggle your feet while you were doing this, or fens. There were steelies, which were big ball bearings and could bust an immy, and depending on the size of the kids, these were legal or illegal. There were reelies and glassies. There was the immy bag that your mother made and you put to one side because all right-minded kids carried them in a big bulge in the pocket until the pocket tore. The grown-ups used to talk about not playing for keeps, which was more nonsense like fathers being pals. And there was the time when I owed a boy I will call Charlie Pagliaro because that was almost his name, 144 enemies. He played me until I had no enemies, and then he extended me credit, and I doubled and redoubled and staggered home trying to absorb the fact that I owed him 144 enemies. Now the first thing to understand is that there's no such thing as 144 enemies. 20 maybe, or with the help of your good friends, 36. Or maybe by going into servitude for the rest of your life to every kid on the whole block, you might get up to 60. But there's no such thing as 144 marbles. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Charlie told me he'd cut off my head with his knife, which was no Boy Scout knife. Charlie being, believe me, no Boy Scout. The third thing is that I believe Charlie would do it. The fourth thing is that I believe Charlie believed he would do it. I still do. Immies were a penny apiece then.